silence. Silence. Thank you. This is the June 30th regular meeting of the Board of Public Works. It's 4 p.m. Our board members are all here. Our mayor, our general manager, Darren Gordon, our legal counsel, Mike Hoffman, and assistant general manager, Austin Kalman. Any revisions or deletions to the agenda? We have the consent agenda, and then we're going to pull out the secretary's report so we can report separately. So is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? So moved. We saw your notes and they were great, but
yeah, I just want to maybe go some of the highlights and then we can discuss in more detail.
Sure.
So, but this was the first live BPW conference since November 2019. And they were expecting about 400 people, and they wound up getting 800. Typical attendance is about 1,500. So it was very well attended, and they kind of crammed things into 2 days in a pre-session. So there was a lot to cover. As typical for APPA, they did a phenomenal job. I went to the 2 pre-conference events, and the first one was on energy storage, which, given where we are with our battery project, was, I think very helpful. The big takeaway is it's rapidly changing, both from technology and from the demand for it. So, some of the highlights is that there's this race for longer life batteries for EVs, and China topped the US and they announced a 1 million mile battery, and immediately Tesla came out and announced a 2 million mile battery. Now, the reason thing is that at the end of life for a car, you've only depleted about 90% of the battery, and it becomes ineffective for longevity. However, the use of that battery for other purposes, specifically like for grid applications, is still there. So the forecast is that by about 3 to 4 years, there's going to be a lot of batteries being repackaged from the EV market into the grid market. And that will greatly drive down the price of batteries for the distribution and transmission industry. Some of the things that are really interesting, there's a plan to put in a 500 megawatt to 1 gigawatt underground line in Iowa to service the wind farm industry out there. And it's mandated by the state that it's a way to get around a lot of the environmental impact issues and the running of transmission. And so from that perspective, they believe that it is cost effective to do it. But a 1 gigawatt buried line is pretty impressive.
What type of multiplier over a basic fee area line?
Well, still the statement for distribution is tenfold. They did not give a price for this project yet. It's through farmland, so it's going to be easements, and it's not necessarily purchasing right of ways, and it's going to be, and then they're covered and it's going to become that farmland. So we'll see where that winds up going. The decommissioning of coal plants continues. Separate from this, one of I can't remember it was AEP or Duke just announced that they're closing down 3 600 to 800 megawatt coal stations because they're not cost effective. And across the bay in Maryland, the HG Wagner plant is closing their coal station and putting batteries used as peakers and energy storage for renewables.
Our plant right here in Sussex County is closing down.
Yeah. The other big discussion was that with a decrease in battery costs and the general belief that there is going to be some sort of carbon tax. Peakers, even without the carbon tax, right now are about 10 times more expensive than batteries. So rather than being a peaker that's running, 300 hours a year, it is more cost effective today to put in batteries to service that. And especially if you have old, like PSEG, you drive the turnpike there, the Linden Station, those units are 40 years old, and they don't meet the current EPA requirements. So you're going to see a lot more batteries going in instead of heavy steel. I think it's, we have an R-spec. The sweet spot for batteries is a 4-hour battery, because that ensures that you're capturing the peak and you're not going to miss it. And with the pricing and technology nowadays, the belief that through multiple different segments of the conference was, if you're going to put in batteries, go for a 4-hour battery, which is what we're planning on. Totally said for most, but right now, the current payback for electric vehicle from a cost and environmental perspective is 5.6 years. So that takes into account the mining, the construction of batteries, the use, and the disposal down the line. And the same thing for an internal combustion engine. So, and that is coming down every year. There's a lot of talk, there's always a lot of talk about whether you can run, how much renewables you can put on the grid before it becomes unstable. It's currently at 60% renewable. So it's a separate microcosm because they import all their fuel, diesel, reciprocating engines. Still able to, the issues of those concerns have been about grid stability. And this proves you can run a stable grid. It's not cost effective right now to do a 60 to 80%, in the continental US. But, people who are shying at this 30% renewable, that is by no means the technological limit now. And one of the things that was always historically was that as you go to batteries and renewables, the inertia of spinning turbine generators. Smart inverters, the inverters can actually create synthetic rotating inertia. So they can build into them now where they got lead lag to monitor the frequency to create a drag or release inertia to the system. And it's basically totally, the incremental cost nowadays for that is almost zero. There's a lot of discussion about ERCOT in Texas. One of the interesting things is, as a result of the incident, ERCOT has gone from a trailing 30-year for their forecasting to a trailing 10-year. And there are a lot of other places who are talking that they're doing the same thing, because history is creating an artificial drag on where we're really going. And whether it's weather, precipitation, or demand and energy use. ERCOT was 3 minutes away from a total blackout of the state. There's other frequency ruling on power plants, and depending on the grid design, but apparently Texas has got the under frequencies are set at 9 minutes. So if you're under 59.7 hertz for 9 minutes, it disconnects your generation from the grid to protect the equipment. We're running like that for 6 minutes. And they honestly believe they're going to lose the grid. So 3 minutes away from a total state blackout.
They just had a problem with too much power. I mean, didn't have a problem because of the heat just recently. Now you have the winter issue. Now they have the summer issue.
Well, because they can't export.
Yeah.
And the other thing that ERCOT was to talk about a total lack of integration of energy policies. Built into the electrical emergency procedures was load shedding. On the load shedding was the gas transmission system. So as they started to shed load, they shed gas compressors, which then forced shutdowns of gas generators, which created more of a load demand. And so that's why they were in this death spiral. Is they had no energy policy. They had an electrical policy, and they treated all the support assets to the electrical as industrial, commercial, whatever. We just learned on how not to develop a regulatory system.
Regulated.
Whether it's state, and FERC is looking at providing rules to energy forecasts routinely are been underestimating where the actual market is going, and they're getting progressively worse. Batteries, looks at lots of change. There's lots of new technologies coming on the market. Something just to be nothing in the immediate term, but there are more things coming along the line. One of the interesting things is there are several companies out there. There's one company called Sunray, which is making use of a new FERC policy, and they're aggregating specifically home solar into large blocks to qualify it as a FERC generation. So they can sell into the local electricity. What you do is you put it on your house and you turn over the control of that to Sunray or other companies. And they take care of the mounting, the dispatching, and everything else. And it actually increases the value of the solar array.
I'm getting back to the technology. Mostly lithium ion, right? Still, what was it? The technology they were proposing for us? It wasn't.
It was still lithium. So what you had is you got a lithium, and you got either an acid or some sort of whatever the media is that interacts with the lithium. And what the legal had was a liquid and then actually more organic.
Yeah. It wasn't to the same flow batteries.
But they would burn.
Efficiency, round cycle efficiency of a battery, I think is 90%, and the round cycle efficiency for a flow battery is 60%. So you put it like that. It's still only been done at very small scales. They have not been able to scale it up. So it's one of those ones that's out there. However, lithium-ion batteries have a tremendous safety issue, as we've seen in some of the recent occurrences. But there's other lithium phosphate, lithium iron, lithium, other type of batteries which are not good for the EV market because they're heavier. batteries market they are. So there's a lot of different chemistries going on out there right now that maybe, but the thing is that if you're taking batteries from the EV market after they're used, will these other batteries be cost effective, or is our lithium ion is going to have that price advantage because it's a second use?
How quickly would it deteriorate from 90% down further in the used market?
10, 20 years. It depends upon the use case. Because if you're using it for peakers, the batteries last a tremendously long time because you're only short cycling them. If you're using it when you're draining them up and down, then you're doing wear and tear. Interesting things, and we haven't really discussed Sergeant Lunde and companies that I've never really seen the charging curves for lithium-ion batteries. And you go from 0 to 90%, and it takes 5 times as long to get from 90% to 100%. And it's due to the battery protecting itself, because once you get that hot, you start to put temperature in the battery, inefficiencies in the charging. So, you get 90% of the battery relatively quickly. Although, the difference between this is that, like if you have a 300-mile battery, you only can charge about 10 miles per hour if you have a category 1 charger, which is 120 volts. You can gain about 100 miles in a 240 volt battery overnight. But you can never charge overnight an EV battery on a category 2. You have to have a category 3, which is the 40 volt, the ones you see out of like Wawa up at the stations here. So if you do routine long distance driving day after day, there still will be a range issue unless you top off at one of these other ones. But most people use their car where, you're using it locally and then maybe on a long distance trip, you can charge the battery all the way up. But something to look at. I mean, we're looking at an EV, so I was.
Do they give any indication on EVs and how that curve is coming up?
I think we're expecting it's going to be 3, 4 in the next 5 years, I think. And it's dependent upon what's in the Biden energy program for installing infrastructure. There's a lot of unknowns right now. There's a lot of discussion on cybersecurity, and the 2 issues on cybersecurity is one is the bond rating agencies, Standard & Poor's, Fitch, Moody's, are all starting to add in cybersecurity of your systems into your bond rating, because they see that as much of a financial risk as your financial solvency. And the other thing about cybersecurity was pointed out is that you're only as good as the soft edge, and with everyone installing home chargers, which are internet connected, it's an access point, and it's the periphery, and Josh will probably attest to this, that you have to really be concerned about. So, I mean, even though we're a relatively isolated utility and we don't touch the internet in many places from our control systems, we're going to be getting to the point where we're going to be touching. So making sure that whatever infrastructure we allow to be attached to our systems is been properly certified is going to be important. Solar, one of the things I agree with is that one of the sort of solar which is called flicker, which is, a cloud front goes over and curves of solar, they always go nice and smooth, they rise and they peak and then go down. If you actually look at those in fragmented increments, that curves have all noise in it. And it's all less than 5 minute intervals. It's by passing clouds, over. And so it's very important that you pair a battery with your solar to keep your power quality up. Which is, where our intentions were is that, besides the battery that we're at Schley, there would be a corresponding battery out at the solar field to be able to make sure that you smooth that curve. And those batteries, because you're only, using them shortly, they have long lives.
Can you give an indication on bond ratings and cybersecurity on insurance coverage and changes or different?
It's all brand new. And a lot of this has come out since the Colonial Pipeline and several cities being taken hostage. And so the bond agencies are still trying to figure out. They know there's going to be a cyber component, but they don't know exactly how they're going to measure it and what it's going to do, and how much of your bond rating is going to be cyber versus financial.
You were talking about the difference in cost that we may have to pay as it relates to coverage for cybersecurity.
Yes. We're talking about our renewal, and they're saying that across the nation, they're looking at about a 30% increase in all cyber insurance. And so just plan on it. It's not and then there will be other items in there that we're going to have to meet the standards to make sure that coverage is live and viable. So they're all toughening up on cybersecurity.
Yeah, they didn't give any numbers, but they just talked about the topics that make sense from what I've read.
If you all had an assessment of your cybersecurity status, we should have.
Yep.
Okay. We did it through the state, through drinking water. And then we had to do it through the insurance company because the insurance company requested we had to move to everything two-factor authentication and so forth. So,
yes.
Has the city done it?
Yeah. Policy also. We just started that last year, separate policy for cybersecurity.
So that was the morning 3-hour session. The afternoon was the board governance. And President and I were going to it last time. And what I was very pleased at is it wasn't a repeat. It was a lot of fresh material. Some of the interesting things that was that the tenure for the average CEO GM is 5 to 10 years. Thank you, Darren.
surpass that.
Yeah. Pulled the average up.
There you go.
Leadership practices to bridge with an acting CEO, GM. In the process of looking for new ones, you should include outsiders and staff. That's the final say, obviously. And should establish a strategic plan on how you're going to go about the practice hiring. As a special project. The strategic plan, I think it's exactly what we've been doing is, yearly review of it and 2 or 3 years for an internal update. So, Bob, coming back to help? Really, I thank Robert for the work he did on putting that last one together.
He did an excellent job.
One they recommended was a yearly board retreat, and recognizing that if you're under FOIA, and that's not necessarily feasible, that, you at least set a special board meeting, a workshop to do, a board retreat, to do a board self-assessment.
We did that, I guess it was the first year I was on, or first couple of years I was on.
Yeah, we should do that annually. Yeah.
Because one of the ones I've been on.
No,
We've been doing it the last few years.
yeah, that's a good idea.
Are they helpful? They can be.
Yeah, I think it's probably a good time to do that now. Tom's one which was really hit close is financial reporting. And the question was thrown out to the group of, the reports you get, are they useful? Do you understand them? And the majority of people said, these are not finance, but they don't have a finance background. It's spreadsheets and it's data, but it's not information. And they suggested that the board look at what format they would like to see information in, and work with staff, whether it's graphical, text, some sort of analysis to go along with the spreadsheet. Darryl and I talked about it a little bit yesterday. I think we need everyone. I think the financial committee that Earl's been requesting would be really helpful. And I mean, good. That's not from the board's perspective, but it would provide input. But I think the five of us really need to look at how better to get this data represented. I'm not sure.
That was mentioned at the last one we attended, even though there wasn't the same, evidently.
Yeah, there's a lot of focus on it this time about reporting for reporting's sake versus meaningful. And I think the city, you guys do basically the same thing, though. It's really spreadsheets with.
We're very detailed analysis of what's on those spreadsheets, though. If you recall, we have about 7 meetings before we adopt a budget.
Oh, no, this is for the annual. This is for the, that's not the annual. That's good. I'm doing for the monthly meeting.
Yeah, we use these spreadsheets.
Yeah. And whether there's a more meaningful way that would help the city council to digest.
I think the training information and
those kinds of things like taxes and meters and things like that. Building permits. I think Anne Marie's given us more information on building permits that have been authorized and things like that. So we're building that. Yes.
I think those, one thing that's always difficult is that we've got 4 utilities and totals, and then the categories. And the categories are fine, but trying to, when you're scanning back and forth across, it's kind of comparison to. That's where, from a trending perspective, yeah, now because we have one of those we recommended was to track and promote in-kind intangibles. And this wasn't new, but they suggested like if you put up the Christmas ornaments, then you keep track of what costs you're spending there and promote it as something that you're doing. We talked about bond ratings. The rate design, so UFS presented. It wasn't good, it was Mark and, I can't remember, but anyway. So it was the same folks that do our rate design. And basically, we were pretty far along on exactly where, but I'm surprised at how few other utilities are. Many utilities do not separate fixed and variable costs. Don't have a readiness to serve or a fixed cost charge. And that was something that I really felt was important from an equity perspective. AMI is critical to any future rates. And I'm surprised at the number because this was nowhere near this large last time I had looked at it. 71% of the utilities have AMI installed. So it is becoming the norm. I know we do this, but it's something we always do more. Educating the public on why our rates are set the way they are. You know, the benefits of a readiness to serve, the impact fees, commodity charges, all that. I know we've all been through that as we've gone out campaigning. It's probably very important to make sure that our staff understands why our rates are set that way, because they have a lot of interface with the public. One is even if the wholesale market, in our case, DMAC, does not have time of use, it still can be very cost effective for us as a distribution entity to do time of use, because it puts off your capital expenditures, like the upgrading of the transformers at Schley with the power, the upgrading of pole transformers. Good shape now by the electrical study we had done 2 years ago. But eventually, as EVs start to penetrate the market, we're going to start to have distribution problems. It's not the long term, but we'll put that off by doing time of use and shaving the peak. The less capital cost you have. Obviously, one interesting is on PGM, their total congestion charges is 25%. We run about 33% because of the idiosyncrasies of where we are on the grid. So, just by shaving your capacity, we can save the public a lot.
What's our monthly capacity charge? You threw out a number a while ago, and it was
I think we're at about 150,000.
150,000 just for capacity. The big discussion we had is, exploring going away from net metering on solar for home installations. Because, the example is, you always heard about California being, they had negative, they would have negative electric prices because everyone was generating, and there was more capacity, but it wasn't at the peak when you needed it at 5 o'clock at night. And obviously, Delaware does not allow you to do that. And something we want to start having conversations with our legislators on, on more equitable as solar prices, costs have gone down. Something that is more meaningful for reimbursing people for selling into the market and buying from the market. I know we do it on the commercial side, like with University of Delaware. But on the residential side, we're a little restricted there. There's a lot of discussions on the different types of rate structures, dynamic, time of use, demand charges, and people are all moving toward this for all the reasons that we just discussed. Time of use, or demand charges, or dynamic pricing, which is, where it looks at basically a spot market, costs. And, you can see the numbers are, 13% of the utilities have gone to dynamic, 7% are using time of use. I was surprised that number was still that low. In the investor-owned utility, that's actually much higher. And demand charges, 23 states now allow utilities to do it.
Changing grid, I'm almost done here. Electricity is currently 20% of all the energy used in the United States. By 2040, it's going to be 40%. And this is just due to the electrification, EVs, the use of heat pumps, just across the board. So, the saying is, you got to be ready for basically doubling of capacity. Renewables will increase threefold by 2040. 2020, and I think I had sent out an email on this one a while ago, was the first time that transportation was a greater portion of the energy market than the power sector. So we're already seeing that flipping. The cost of electricity has remained flat to the cost effectiveness of the renewables coming on. I mean, this is why we're seeing coal plants going offline because they can't compete with either natural gas or renewables. Cost of the capital cost of an EV is going to be equal to an internal combustion engine in 3 years. That's not taking into account the life cycle cost then. That's just first in. That means you can buy an electric vehicle or a combustion vehicle for the same price, the savings, and it costs about 1/3 of the energy in an electric vehicle does internal combustion.
So we have tax breaks or anything along those lines.
Currently 2% of vehicles are EVs, and that's to be increased to 40 to 60% in 3 years.
Is that all vehicles?
That is.
Or is that new vehicles being sold?
What's that?
Is that new vehicles being sold, or is that?
Oh, that's new vehicals, yeah.
Okay.
Because you've got a lifetime, and it also, it's, the other one is kind of an influence, it's buses and, cars, trucks. It's not little trucks yet.
Did they talk about fleets?
Yeah.
They did.
And one of the big things is that the electric buses are really gaining hold, and you see many cities going to them, and many states mandating them for school fleets. And one of the positive things about that is that those vehicles, because they're parked most of the time, can be integrated into the grid.
Management.
Yep.
Yeah. So, from a grid perspective, and that's something else we probably really need to talk with the state about, because as far as I can tell, the state of Delaware is doing nothing on that for the school buses. And, we're still out there buying buses, and Bluebird's one of the big suppliers of buses.
With contracted, they're not purchased by the school system. So mandated, but what I'm saying is a lot of them are contracted.
So smart thermostats and smart chargers, that it can be cost effective to subsidize those for homeowners. So, for example, the thermostats for a house, installs them for the ability to turn the temperature up or down 2 degrees on peak days. So you're not giving up total control, and you're not building, you're asking people to be unbearable, but 2 degrees makes a big difference during the peaks. And the same thing is with chargers. because the cost of installing a charger, I think we're giving numbers of about like 1,500 to 2,000, assuming we don't have to put a new service in the house. Several utilities are installing them for their customers as long as they can control the charge.
The state has grants out for that. That's why a lot of the utility companies are doing it. Because I know that, I believe the state covers, what, 90% of the total cost, don't quote me on it, if they procure it.
One of the ones that's been coming to fore a lot is hydrogen storage or hydrogen as storage medium. And it's to make use of excess renewables. Hydrogen can be used both as a fuel for transportation and for my company, my excavator, GE. GE has come out with a new F-series turbine that can run on 60% hydrogen, 40% natural gas. So that really brings those small combustion engines or turbines, small, 30 megawatts, down to being able to be used as part of support for renewables, so bridging the peaks, and not add a lot of additional carbon. The last one was on, there's always a session, a couple-hour session on legislative wrap-up. The three big takeaways, and I think we know, the plan is to have all lead pipes removed by 2030. It's part of the American Rescue Plan. EPA
Is looking to subsidize that at all?
There's funding in.
That is one of the authorized expenditures in the AP in the
RC.
The biggest change there is that they're actually looking to push it instead of having it go to utilities, and it goes to the individuals. They recognize the utilities, most of the main pipes are not lead. You don't have the issues there. The issues are at the homeowner side. So there's a lot of money here in the state, but you've got to be a homeowner looking for that. And Wilmington is taking great advantage of that up there.
We have a list of homes in Vicar Ward that were
And after like 1986 is the last time that you had any kind of, prior to that was when you had the issues. Most of what's happened in Lewes has already been upgraded and fixed from there.
Yeah.
So that's what you're looking at.
That you would adopt the policy. If somebody was doing major renovation, they had to replace all the way out.
Right, but this is inside the house?
But I'm talking from the curb box to the house, which is most houses, if they've had any renovation, wherever it pierces the foundation, have already replaced that forward. But they haven't done the piece between the foundation and the curb box.
I think there's still a lot of houses in this town that have that have faucets, fixtures, and frankly, all the copper lines. Soldered, prior 1986 was lead-based. After that, it's tin and tellurium.
Is there anything we can do to facilitate that for those people that we think live in that bucket?
It's really theirs. I guess we could look into it. We can look into it, but what we've seen, we don't qualify for.
And that's what's currently in the American Recovery Act. There's another pot of money, which we don't know what it's going to be, that's in the infrastructure bill. And that could be actually substantially larger. And that's not only, that will not only help us out on this, but also on the sewer side. EPA is looking at a carbon emissions tax regulation. But that, because the one that was being drafted under Obama lapsed, start back at ground zero. So that's a 7-year process to get through the rules making. But they are updating the lead copper rule. that is expected to draft out by the end of this year. What was interesting was the wonders of the United States. Trump, where the feds have jurisdiction over pollution emissions. And so it's called the Wonders of the United States. And it was under the administrations, Obama and even under Bush, had been greatly expanded. And then Trump cut it all out. And it had to be basically, a major river. So the tributaries going into the river were not really to be controlled. And that is being looked at being reinstated or expanded. So.
Tom, that was great. I went through that. I was just a lot of great information.
And, I sent the handouts out. I don't know if you, EPI was their Electric Power Research Institute, which by the way is changing their name to the Energy Power Research Institute. So they're now getting into hydrogen and other things. Expensive. So, a phenomenal job at Ashrad's presentation.
In previous years, we've had good showing at APPA, and hopefully going forward, I miss it because I always learned a lot.
Yeah, it was one of the extracurricular activities. The vendor was just tabletops.
That's a shame.
It was,
Because that's an important time too.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question about the AMI connection?
Mhm.
Is that a security risk? If we're now isolated from,
Not if it's done properly. I mean,
it can be mitigated.
I mean, it's like anything else with the internet. You have to have robust and, I think as Josh would probably attest to, the pipeline as an example, but there are ways of mitigating it and, the certification process. You need to make sure that you're buying AMI from a company that's got a good cybersecurity record. And basically, there's only there's only like 3 big vendors out there that supply that stuff.
That conference is usually in June, like it was now. It's usually over Father's Day weekend, unfortunately. So, when we ask why, they say, well, we can get hotel rates much cheaper. So the conference is cheaper. Still, I think, we should all look at it again because it's full of great information. It is.
Okay.
Thank you, Tom. Back to the agenda. Item 5, we see the Infomark wastewater treatment plant report. This is Mike.
You need to approve all those minutes since you pulled that out of the consent agenda.
We approved the consent agenda.
Mayor's correct. You removed the secretary's report for the purpose of Tom to present.
Thank you.
I need the minutes.
Thank you. I thought we approved it. Okay. Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Sorry, Press. So the consent agenda has been approved. What we need is a motion to approve the minutes covering April 28th, 2021.
Oh, I'm sorry.
May 17th, 2021, June 17th, 2021, and June 21, 2021. Feel free to just say so moved. A second. So it's been moved by, thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Now all in favor?
So, Mike.
Good evening, everybody.
This is Richard Platt. He's our project manager at the plant, taking care of the day-to-day. See everybody in person. Going back to April, a lot of the stuff Phil's on. So, but
we got the mixed liquor concentrations down in the biological train to an acceptable level. So we're down just over 8,000. Our target's 8,000, but we've been between 8,000 and 9,000. So we've been holding steady there. So in the May report, I took solids handling off the, I put that into green, yellow. So we're doing well there. On the headworks starting here in May, GMB was out to review the headworks equipment back on May 5th. They're engineering a solution that will include a compactor and get rid of the light pactor. So other than that, we're moving forward with, just like pulling teeth to get pricing on the rebuild of both the screens, but we're moving forward with that. Pushing share with Logan to get us a price, and that will include labor. Also, the headworks we had a VFD failure. Keystone was in to replace that, so that the variable frequency drive for one of the EQ tanks, and we are waiting. I think Josh and Keystone are working on a project to replace that EQ controls, including the VFDs, and I also tie that into a new SCADA system. So we're back online. We have VFDs allow the system to run more efficiently, but we have bypass, we have regular drives, motor starters that work. We can bypass the VFDs, so we can pump if that VFD fails. And we just it's not as efficient, but it'll pump the EQ tank down to a certain level and shut off. And when it gets back to a certain level, it'll come back on. So instead of running a variable rate to maintain a certain level. So the light packer is completely offline. We took the element out to see if we could get it repaired, and no one could repair it. So we came up with a temporary solution where we're pumping the screenings into the grit auger housing, and that's been working a lot better. We're moving a lot more racks, so that's been good. And that was actually Darren's idea. He came out to the site and came up with that idea. We did engineer a temporary solution where we brought in a dewatering roll-off container, a filter. So we had that all set up to go online, and Denrec just gave us the go-ahead on Monday of leave, and we put it online this morning. So it worked pretty well. We took it offline for tonight. Just want to run it again tomorrow, make sure all the bugs are looked at, there's no issues. And then we do want to get some alarms put into it, high-level alarms hooked to the point watch. That's there at the plant. Okay, filters. We're cleaning the last module that the contractors were using. We're cleaning the last train. So they're halfway through the last train. So we'll be through one round in 2 weeks. In the next 2 weeks, we'll be through the first round of cleaning, and then we will pull a module from train 4 and review and see how ragged up it is, to see if we have to resume cleaning of that module immediately. So we're hoping that with lower mixed liquors, we're not going to see as much sludging, and it won't be so urgent. But we'll stay on it, and we're monitoring the TMPs closely. We did have an event during Memorial Day weekend where the TMP spiked, and we knew it wasn't because of ragging or sludge, because the TMPs, if we made the filter run shorter, the TMPs wouldn't spike, and right after a back pulse, the TMPs went back to normal. So it ended up being a biological issue where we couldn't get enough air DO to the mixed liquor, and we think it was, a lot of sludge has been sitting in lines throughout the collection system. People came to town, flushed a lot of solids into the system, and that was the issue. So everything recovered towards the end of Memorial Day weekend. TMPs are good across the board on all the membranes.
What have you done to avoid that in the future? Is there something that happened that you didn't anticipate?
We got Xenon to modify something in the program that we can third row on. So once we got the DO up, everything fell into place. So we think that will mitigate it in the future. Pump stations, we did get pumps 1 and pump station 4 put back together. It was clogged. The suction line was clogged, and we had a struggle getting it unclogged. We had to get the contractor in to pump down the wet well, and we ended up getting it unclogged by pressurizing with air. And then shortly thereafter, weeks later, it got clogged again. Not sure what the issue was. And that time, BPW came out with their vac truck and helped us pump down the wet well, and we got it unclogged. So we're changing the configuration of the pump cycles. We're using that as a lag pump because the influent pipe goes directly into that suction line, and just whatever inert solids are coming in, it seemed to get pulled right into that pump. So the pump does have a grinder, but we pulled some huge rag bubbles out of the suction line. So haven't had an issue. That was 3 weeks ago, at least. September or June 11th, we cleared that. So we haven't had an issue since then. We did send back the diesel bypass pump. We had it on site until that time. So just a note on pump stations. Just we brought up to Darren and Austin that pump station control panels are showing some age, and just how BPW wanted to handle that as far as repairing one at a time or looking at a larger project. So we discussed for now budgeting. We have an idea of how we'd like the panels redone, and it would be very simple and low expense. So for now, we're looking at just replacing as needed, and then potentially whatever money was budgeted for that year, we would knock a couple out. Or
How expensive are those panels?
we're looking at. To do it where we want to do it within the existing panels, and it would be less than 5,000. So.
We kind of discussed that you would do a survey. You'd take the 32 lift stations and kind of give us a report of which ones you felt were critical, which ones you felt were, so that we could kind of prioritize it. And then we started to guess on that today, actually. Very good.
Is that per lift station?
Yes.
5,000 per. And that would be to replace the motor starters and to replace the float switches with a level transducer and a simple motor controller. And some of the pump stations within the collection system are already using that motor controller and transducer. So it would be.
When do you think the assessment across all of them would be done at this point?
Well, I have pictures of every control panel. I know which ones, but it's which ones are the most critical, the bigger ones. But there's also, there's also some stuff that needs to be done within the wet wells. But yeah, I mean, we've been to the pump stations. I mean, I would guess 10 to 12 of them would need updated.
They're in critical condition.
It's not critical, but I mean, but when we have somebody, when the contractor, when the motor motors fail, they're obsolete. So it just makes sense to do it at that time. So they're working, everything's working.
You can have mechanical equipment, additional mechanical equipment within the wet well.
Yeah, well, it's the, they used to use it, just, no, correct.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a configuration that they used to use in pump stations that it's very difficult to get to. It's a junction box, like in the middle, we call it an octopus. It's in the middle of the wet well. And it's very difficult to get to, with confined space. Entry, now, back in the day, they probably didn't do confined space entries. They just went down in there. And, for us, it's a confined space entry to get to that. We generally, and our predecessors had generally just bypassed that, and it's just hanging there. And they would, put junctions in, to bypass that. And that's what we've been doing, but it's,
Are we replacing something that's like for like, or is it a new technology that we're replacing it?
We replaced the float switches with a level transducer and a little motor controller. Right now, everything's relays. So it's just a little $500 motor controller that, so right now there's relays. Each float goes to a relay. There's an alternating relay that alternates from pump to pump. This little controller would do all that. And then you put a backup float for a high level alarm. And that would go right to the point watch system. So just in case that failed, we'd still run along for the high level.
Already available, those pieces of equipment.
Everything's in stock. We get it from Granger. So it's, yeah. So that's pretty much for the executive summary. Anybody have any questions?
I have a general question. I talked to Darren about this earlier. We're talking about a pretty big expense for the headworks we do. And yet Suez is suggested that we do away with the grinders in the pumping stations. There are two different approaches to the same problem. I mean, I guess that's going to be a big number too if we did that instead. Rich, do you agree that the headworks is the way to go versus Suez's idea of replacing grinder pumps maybe with solids handling pumps?
Yeah, I think the headworks is I think that needs to be done, and I think if, the grinder pumps could be considered to be replaced if the headworks needs to be done regardless. I mean, that's part of every treatment plant. And, it's, they're 15 years old and they're showing wear. The compactor is going to help us out a lot. The factor system just grinding, to continue to grind up the solids and try to remove that live.
So we have to address the headwork. We did the solids handling pumps in them.
Yeah. So, I mean, we always say, I mean, the first 10 years that the membranes were online, there wasn't a significant issue with ragging. So, I know getting different flows and what people put in the sewer is different now. And, we were taking more flow. So, I mean, those are all factors, that all factors into it. But, we believe, and Suez initially, during the development of the upgrade, they signed off on the 5 millimeter and 2 millimeter screen. So, we believe that, restoring that equipment to original and putting the compactor in is going to help significantly.
It seems like rather than trying to change everything at once, getting the headworks up to speed the 2 and 5 mil screen, moving the recycle line between the 2 and 5 mil screen, the regrinding and the compactors. We should get that in and get the system stable. And then if we need to do additional things, we can look at them. But I think, changing everything at once, you wouldn't know what you're.
I'll tell you, so we had a meeting with them just yesterday, having that screen that they're talking about. That is fantastic. It's a 300 micron screen or a 3 millimeter screen, same thing. I think that's going to just help a whole bunch. And so it's going to, instead of that stuff grinding and grinding and grinding until it finally gets through the tube, it's going to be captured, taken out. And I think we're going to, I'm hopeful that you're going to see that change in a very short order. That'll be very positive. And so thank you. You guys came up with that, and fantastic.
What percentage of the flow are you taking off into that stream?
So everything that goes through the screener, so everything right now is just hooked up to the 2 millimeter screener. Everything that goes through the 2 millimeter screener is pumped into there.
Okay, so just for clarity, what you're saying is everything that's captured by the 2 mil screen, not everything. Everything else is going through, but just what's captured by the 2 mil.
Yeah, we have screening, so whatever's caught in the 2 millimeter screen and washed into a trough, there's a grinder pump there that sucks it up and grinds it, and that's pumping it directly to this dewatering container. Later this week or early next week, we'll have the 5 millimeter screener doing the same thing. But we're right now the 2 millimeter would be capturing all the screens. So the 2 millimeter, the EQ pumps pump through the 2 millimeter screen. So everything that goes to the biological trains has to go through the 2 millimeter screen. So we're getting everything. So, and I agree with Aaron. I mean, I think it's going to make a big difference. We're just, just have to watch it because we don't want to, overflow it. It's right now, today we were watching it, it's pumping a lot of liquid. So, but we may need to get a filter with bigger pores, so we're still playing around with it, but I agree with Aaron. I mean, we're very hopeful. It's a good temporary solution. The roll off is I think it's $1,400 a month is a rental on it. So
I like how you guys worked through this problem. I know you guys were wrestling with us a long time, and I thought you guys did a good job of coming together and figuring something out. So.
Well, I think capital budget wise, we're going to do pretty well too. I mean, we have a pretty good game plan moving forward. We also talked about looking at the lift stations and putting the control modules in place. We also talked about trying to create continuity across all of them using similar pumps so that we don't have to order 30 different pumps. We have some sort of program to where we can have pumps on hand that aren't geared specifically to one lift station. It makes it a little bit easier supply chain wise.
Yeah. A couple of questions. One was, in the Suez report, they talked about means of cleaning the membranes and recommends doing them horizontally. What's the game plan for how to get the time down that it takes to clean those membranes? Because I know it's taking you guys an inordinate amount of time, more than you expected, but we've got to find a more efficient way of doing it. So the Suez, I think, makes sense. Taking the tension off them, but building some sort of box to put them in, can partially wash them before starting to pick them, so we reduce the manual labor. What's your guys' game plan for gaining efficiency on that?
We're of the belief that it's not going to be as it's not going to take as much work with the screening equipment in place, because that's what was that's what occurred 10 years ago.
And I recognize that's part of it, but they still do need to be cleaned at least twice a year. That's what Suez's recommendations are. And so when we are cleaning them, to be able to get to a more efficient way, because it's a very tedious process. I've been down there for.
Yeah, it is. We put it in a cradle. We modified the we modified the stands to put in the cradle, which does take a lot of tension off, and we wash everything down to the bottom. I think that's more efficient than putting them in the wood containers laying flat, just because we can wash them and see what we're doing better. But as far as, I mean, we don't have an answer for, as far as, moving forward, it's just the act of taking them out and, taking them out and just pulling them in each module or each module and checking it takes a long time. In the past, we had done it once a year, in the winter when things were slower. That was the schedule. We are hoping that with the bringing the Headworks equipment back to original form, that we only have to do it once a year. We pull them, we would inspect them, every 6 months, but pull and clean them once a year. And that would be our hope, because it is, it is very labor intensive.
Well, and I heard here, and it would be nice if we can get back to the 1 year cycle, and, we're a proven track record. But I think, anything we can do to reduce the manpower, I mean, it's tedious work on the guys, and it's expensive.
Yeah, and I mean, we talked about potentially, putting a vessel online, or, building a vessel that you can put the module in and aerate it, for a longer period of time. It's just with the crane, we need a taller building to be able to lift it up and put it in a vessel like that. So I mean, it's something that we can continue to discuss with Xenon. I will tell you that one of the contractor that's helping us out with the cleaning is I think it's the Ocean City plant. He let us know that and we were invited to do a visit there. He said that they're cleaning theirs every 3 years. So they're 1 millimeter screener online. So that's secondhand information from a contractor. So, but
one of the things that's been an issue is that the aeration, and the aeration has been very where are we at on resolving that? And
we believe that the lower mixed liquors will resolve that. We are, when we go back and pull train 4 to do an inspection after train 3 is done, we'll have more information whether that's correct or not. But we don't see any membrane clogging. Visually from up top, you can see the bubbles distributed evenly. We aren't seeing any membrane clogging.
so you think the aeration plugging issues are behind us now? Or?
I've always thought it was related to having high mixed liquors. We looked back last summer and mixed liquors were up 19,000, 65,000.
I think the ports for the air were quite large, though. And when we're looking at them when they were being installed, seems odd that I'm just so grasp the high mixed liquor being able to plug.
Well, we get solids settling at the bottom also. That's one thing they let us know when they look back at the drawings, that normally the membranes are set higher off the ground. Our units are set, I think, 3 inches off the ground. Is that correct, Richard?
It's about 6 inches off.
And they wanted them 9.
Yeah, and they talked about them being about 18, I believe is the number that they talked about.
Yeah.
When they come down, so.
But
That's more room to settle the solids in the bottom.
Yeah, and that's I don't know that we didn't discuss with them any modifications, but that is something we can just discuss with them. And like I said, believed and hope that the lowering of the mixed liquors is, gonna improve that problem.
Well, I'd like to ask is that, either the projects or somewhere in front that these items that have been ongoing, we have something that we are checking every month, so that we're informed about what's going on. To add that to it.
Yes, so, and Mr. Commander, also, in regards to, in regards to the sludging and the clogging of the aeration, what we found is that the filters are very effective in removing it, and so what's going on is it is creating a very thick biosolids, which as it's sloughed off through the aeration system, which it's not completely clogging, but it is causing those sloughings or hardened sludge to then get into the larger surface, porous surfaces, which restricts the ability of the airflow to prevent it from continuing to shed. So that's part of what we're seeing. In addition to the screenings, which we're trying to address with the headworks, those fibers that attach to the strands of the membranes, that also helps in holding on to the solids, the mix, that's produced via the mixed liquor. So by reducing the solids of the mixed liquor, it then makes a thinner. It helps to prevent that thick solid from occurring, and then is allowing it to then be shed off instead of being retained in the cassettes themselves, the fibrous membrane. So it's holding on to it and capturing it, and it's working. So the membranes themselves are working so effectively that it's creating a very thick byproduct, which is where the challenge is for wastewater, because those membranes are both for wastewater and water applications. So that's one of the things that we're trying to work through. So by restoring the headworks, it will reduce the fibers, which will then help reduce any of the clogging or negative effects that are occurring to the aeration system for.
Yeah, I agree. I know I said before about not changing the lift stations. I mean, I think getting the headworks up will expose what down the line we need to be doing. But everything on the projects table, I would ask that the table be add like next steps, and we have estimated completion dates, but they're 2021. Something. So that we know where things are in the process. Just a quick, and maybe the film that showed no solid swirling, it was all liquid, and then in May, there was solid swirling. Was this just a timing issue, or?
Yeah, we had the sludge hauler. We were supposed to go to the county. And the county didn't have a permit to haul our sludge. It was an oversight. So we stockpiled a bunch of sludge, and we were hauling.
Okay. Yeah, so it was a large volume in May.
So in May, now Clean Delaware, the county still didn't get permitted, but we got Clean Delaware to haul it to the county. So Clean Delaware is coming, using the county's container and hauling it to the county. And the county agreed to take more than one load a week. So we were sending a load, every couple of days to them.
And then just a nit, I noticed that we're renting the pressure washer for clean drying beds.
Yeah, I mean, that was a reactionary thing, Tom, where we tried it out. And it didn't really work in the winter, but now in the summer we aren't renting it, but it is something we would probably consider, looking into purchasing one.
Yeah, because it seems like I'm gonna get $170 in shop.
I know. It was just,
No, if you were starting to that side, I understand.
Okay, any other questions?
Goodbye. Would it be all right if we discuss the charges for the additional charges for the?
Well, I think we're responding to that. Talk about that in executive session. You can put another subject. Response to that.
All right, thank you very much.
Item 6, receive the president's report. Well, this has been a important week. We got a charter change done. That's been in the works for some time. The charter change allows the city to make decisions about where BPW services outside the municipal boundaries. It's corrected a problem that arose when a Superior Court judge said that he did not have the right to sue and be sued, so that's being corrected. And we, in addition to those corrections, we've signed an MOU, a separate item, to work with the city to help facilitate communication and coordination with the city. So a lot happened, and we owe a lot of thanks to our elected officials. Lopez was through this for the past several months, as did Steve Smick. They facilitated negotiations and helped make this happen. They also introduced the bill to the General Assembly for approval. And we have to give thanks to Pete Schwarzkopf, who supported the bill, and I think Representative Townsend, who at the last minute came in and introduced it also. So we owe a lot of thanks and credit to those people. And I think we're looking forward to working with the city in an open and transparent forum and communications going forward. So I think we've got a lot of good things in there to help that to happen. So we're looking forward to. We're looking for the same. I know you are, and I think you're as interested as we are at this point. So thank you very much, and thanks for the. Council, let's see, we still have one council member sitting here. Thank you for what you've done. The council worked hard to get that resolved. So thank you. Thank you very much. It's important. It's an important week. Thank you. Item 7, receive general manager's report.
I really don't have any, unless somebody has any questions. One of the items on my general manager's report was talking about the lights down at the parking lot change on Slade. And just as we've talked about doing a master plan down there, we'd love to be involved in any of the planning there. That's gone a long ways and we haven't been involved. So if you have, JMD hasn't finished laying it out yet. So we'll be happy to do that. I think we're scheduled to do something, a meeting fairly soon. Very good. Other than that, I have nothing unless there's any questions.
Darren, you mentioned the other day there were some issues with the elevations survey.
Yeah, that can resolve. The minutes has not yet.
We have a discussion planned on Thursday afternoon with Atlantic.
Just wondering, was there anything related to the Smith property? I see a notation here.
There's things going on with Dalton Smith and that right now, and that. Thank you, Mayor.
It's still in process, in other words.
Things have gotten stirred. I will leave it alone. Very much impressed. Okay.
I was just going to add, I think the mayor summed it up well. There are active discussions, and I think the parties are actively working towards a resolution, and these conversations are ongoing.
Next section, presentations. Receive the American Public Power Association Certificate of Excellence in Reliability awarded for significantly exceeding the national average of reliability. Congratulations.
We've got, and really truly not me. Don't welcome, thank me or anything like that. But Bob, we have in our presence today a very significant visitor with us. He's usually not here, but Bob Barnes is our electric supervisor. Bob, you've been working for the BPW now for about 38 years. Bob has collected these awards many times, especially the safety awards, which he gets annually because it keeps us people safe, and we appreciate that immensely. This is a certificate from the American Public Power Association, and it reads the following. This is to acknowledge that the Lewes Board of Public Works has significantly exceeded the average of all U.S. electric utilities for reliable electric service. The utility participates in the American Public Power Association's e-reliability tracker service
to track its power outages and restoration against national benchmarks. In this, we've got a couple of them. I'll point out two of them. Number one, and you've got the report, but there's things called the SAIDI and the CAIDI and the SAFI and the CAFI, and there's all kinds of cool ones that's neat. But what it does is it takes how many outages compared to how many others have. It takes the duration of outages compared to what everybody else has. It compares the duration. Anyways, there's all kinds of different metrics. Let me point out two. The SAIDI, which is the System Average Interruption Duration Index, which simply says for a major event, it lasts for X number of minutes. For us, that number is 23.7 minutes, while the other averages are up to 139 and 154 utilities in our region. So we are significantly better than our competition. The next one is SAI, the Average Service Availability Index, which goes the other direction and says how reliable in numbers are you? And we are at 99.9954.
Lots of different.
Yeah. The reason it is not 100 is because of the tree rats, also known as squirrels, that are around in this area. And I proposed that we could turn the Boy Scouts loose with BB guns and improve that number significantly. But the mayor has frowned upon that suggestion and said, no, not a chance. But
Section of reliability at BPW, the largest outage factor is tree rodents.
tree rodents, it is.
Squirrels are the largest cause of outage across the United States, followed by snakes.
So if you're underground, if you're also, you don't have a problem.
Snakes.
And then you go for we tried many of them in Arizona, a few things, with the, Bob, can I ask you, does anybody ever take some pictures of this? Would you take one of those pictures?
And this all plays into the RP3, which we got to. So the RP3 looks at reliability, safety, workforce development.
Very seriously, Bob, how many days left?
65.
65 days, and we cannot thank you enough. Bob does the things both in the, I thank you. Right
in the middle, Bob. Right in the middle, Bob.
Thank you, guys. I bought back, but he does enough. He does the customer service around here. Everybody knows him. Man, just like he doesn't live inside the city limits, he can run against you and beat you. Bob is the man. He takes care of everything. I really appreciate it. He's incredible. So thank you.
Congratulations.
I've had it for many, many, many years.
I just realized I made a major omission in talking about the charter change, because the guy that powered us through this thing was sitting right there. Again, you advised us through this thing, and we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for your effort.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, old business, open forum general discussion for the renewal of the current agreement with the University of Delaware wind turbine interconnection agreement. Mr. Boyd.
As our lead members of the board, we have had an agreement with the University of Delaware since 2010. The first one went all the way for 5 years to 2016, and has worked very, very well. The agreement is that on a 1 month basis, we net meter. If they create more energy in the wind turbine than what they use, we buy that electricity at a wholesale cost. So the very same cost that we would buy it from DMEC, from our supplier, we buy it from the university. If there is a month where they need power from us, we provide them power through our wholesaler DMEC, and we give it to them and we sell it to them at an industrial rate. Over the last 3 years, it is approximately, we buy about $100,000 worth of electricity from them. And usually about 2 months during the summer, with the hardest time when they're actually doing their heating load or their cooling loads, we buy approximately we sell approximately $30,000 worth of electricity to them. They're happy, very happy with the arrangement. I am very happy with the arrangement. It is a win-win. They're being taken care of, we're being taken care of. And back in 2016, we renewed this with an amendment to this agreement, which was approved by them, the first amendment, and it pushed it off to June 30th of 2021. We took the very same amendment documentation. I have changed the dates on it to the following. We're going to now assign it starting July 1, 2021, and this agreement will go through June 30th, 2026. I shared that with Jeremy Firestone, who then sent it to the president, both the president of the University of Delaware, Mr. Dennis, I'll say the last name. Asada, there you go. And the president of First State Marine Wind, who is John Long. They have signed it and said they are happy with it, ready to go. I've brought this to Mike's attention. Mike has said it is good to go. All right. I would request that you approve it, we sign it, and that it is good to go for another 5 years.
I'll make a motion that we approve the extension of the wind turbine agreement with the University of Delaware.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Item 10, open forum general discussion of election results and lessons learned from the May 8th, 2021 BPW election. Oh, we spent a lot of time on this and
Tom's presentation.
Oh, me competition?
No. The idea behind this, the best that I talked about in advance as well with some of the other folks, is there's probably not a better time to get input from our constituents than an election process. When you're out knocking on doors, talking to people, whatever it is, we probably have more inputs at this time than any other time. So what I wanted to do was capture some of the things that I heard walking around, and people can certainly reply as well. People are wildly positive about the Board of Public Works. So what I focus on here isn't necessarily positive things, because we do those well. The question is, what can we do better? So there is it's seemingly a negative spin, but that's not the intent. It's just to focus on areas we can think about improving. Three major pillars that people thought about us from. Number one was to solve the issue with BPW city. Obviously, that got taken care of, and that's fantastic news. The second largest concern they had was the spill at the wastewater treatment plant. The reality is there's things we can do about that. There's definitely, things we need to talk about today to make sure that those kinds of things don't happen. But those were the top two issues that I typically heard walking around with Tom and Richard. I assume it was probably the same for you guys as well. The reality is those two things were what was mostly in the newspaper. And that was the perceptions that they had because of it. But if you go down to the next one, this is where it really matters, in my opinion. The customers knew about us, the higher their perceptions were of us. So the top two things were certainly in the Cape Gazette, were certainly what a lot of people read and knew about. But the people that had more information about us liked us more. And the two examples I gave is some people was they basically, what do you do? What's the BPW? The information was much more granular. Why are you reserves so high? So even though they were asking that question about why the reserves were so high, they were people that liked us more because they knew us and understood us. So the question is, or my belief is that it transparency allows people to better understand us and better like us. Let's look for ways to be more transparent. So if you look overall the way, there's some ideas that I had for inputs and outputs, and candidly, they overlap as well. But one of the things we've talked about is a finance committee. I'll go into a little more detail on the following page. Talk about adding items to the agenda for a board. What's the criteria that we have to do that? Talk about, if you look at the different models that we have as far as how a board operates, I think having a workshop to understand how we can operate within Carver or other methods are important as well. And then if you look at some of the outputs, you can have newsletters. We can do that with the city and combine those efforts with us. Sewer wastewater treatment plant reports that come out. I do with some of the local environmentalists. They know more than I do. And it's great to get that kind of information from them. And it was interesting because one that just went to the plant fairly recently, and they're writing a letter on behalf of the Cape Gazette. Mm-hmm. So I thank you for taking it through the plan as well. But it's an idea of giving people the information. And something we need to improve, or then let's improve. When it's something we do well, you actually create more spokesmen for us, people that actually will talk to other people. And I think that's important for us to consider. Talk about more detailed agenda items in the Cape Gazette. And I always give this analogy, and I actually don't like it, but it's fairly true. I live on Gills Neck Road. The people on Gills Neck Road don't care a lot about what happens on New Road. That's just how people are today, right? And the reverse is also true. But if we had agenda items that were in the paper that said we're going to be talking about making a Pilot Town Road, people from Pilot Town Road are likely going to be in that session and have a conversation with us. So I think being able to articulate exactly what we're talking about so we can have targeted audiences, I think that's something we should consider as well. The other thing that I talked about, and when I talked to a lot of people, there was 4 people that asked me the best question. And it wasn't as good as the first time as it was the 4th time. But the question was, how are you going to get these things done? So every time you run for election, you've got all these great ideas, all these things that you want to do. But the question was, but how are you going to get them done? And the good news is the last person I talked to was Dennis Forney. I seem to have a better answer. That was good timing. But it's about improvement. It's about how do we get better every year in what we do. And I talked about the election improvement process. We go through an election, and the reality is that we learn something every time we go through an election. And I know Darren put through a document how we can improve that. That could be a policy that we have so that every year that there's an election, we actually pull that playbook down. Okay, what did we do last year? What did we do that we can do better? And then every year we're improving that process. It's a continual improvement process. Website improvement. Josh a few times because someone will call me and say that the last one was that the map that we had for the hazardous waste. It was actually a link that was in Slow Road, but it was in Texas. Just a mistake, right? An easy mistake. But we got fixed within 2 minutes. Think about it from a different perspective is what a perspective where every year we go through the website with someone from the city, with someone from the Rehoboth BPW, whatever, and say, what can we do? What best practices can we leverage, and how can we all collectively get better? And I talked about the other best practices sessions as well, whether it's customer service or technology. But the way you get it done, and the way I said it to Dennis Forney, is you get that done through policy. To say that we're just going to get better every year is one thing. To say that we're going to have a review of the best practices from the last election cycle, that puts it into the DNA of the business. That means it lasts beyond anybody that's on this board. And as more come on, we add them. As things need to be taken off, we take them off. But the reality is you drive that kind of DNA, in my opinion, through an active policy process.
Is there even more disastrous going to these?
Yes, yes.
Because I didn't see the asterisk.
The asterisks were things that I'd like to, well, one I referred it already, which is handing out the reports, and the other was the finance committee, which is on the next page. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to have a finance committee. The city already has one on the ex officio member on that, and I think there's a lot of value to having it. To do in this session is review this with the board. I'm not necessarily asking for a vote of approval. If you give it to me, great. But I want the support of the board obviously to do this. I'll recalibrate it based on the feedback that you provide me today or some other time. Develop policy to seek final approval so that I can come to you guys and say, okay, I have your approval. Here's what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to do it. As a board, we collectively agree on that, and let's start the process. Hopefully. So the way the business case works from my perspective is if the perception of BPW improves with transparency is a good thing. There's inputs allow us to make better decisions. I am again an ex-official member of the city, and I can tell you getting involved in that process and see how the city does it, to me adds value. And I think that's something we can do in collaboration with them as well. So if you think about it, if we got customers, or we got HOA members, or we've got city council members that can be on this team, and there's other Mike Hogan and other very smart people to be on as well, they actually become people who can speak for us. Talk to some of the HOA leaders, they knew more about us than I did, candidly, after having been on the board for 8 months. They knew about this charge and that charge and how it works. They become our advocates. I'd like us to have more advocates. I think these people that I send the wastewater treatment plants to, they become our advocates. We need to have a more open policy, a more transparent perspective to bring more people into the fold. Because again, the more the more they tend to like us. So let's leverage that and do that within this finance committee as well. Any questions or thoughts or concerns?
Well, what about when you say, you want to develop a policy and so forth, I think that's great, but I really think we need to get more policies, and one of them is a finance committee to get started. I mean, that's crucial, I think, to have something like that. I'd like to see, we can just get a consensus, can't we, to say, let them get started and start developing one?
Just to clarify, I think if the question is this something, a road the board wants to go down? I agree with you, Tom, that just a consensus. At some point, you need the structure to come before the board. Yeah. The bylaws, what it looks like and whatnot, and that will be formalized on an agenda and approved. So that's not what is happening here. It's just a consensus to continue to go.
So I think we should get a consensus to get it started and let him get started on it. And obviously we have to approve what Mike's saying, policy.
And there's got to be more structure. There's got to be people that are to be on it.
So I think it's important to get started with it. So that's my vote anyhow.
Some things that I had said earlier on, transparency on the rate structure, many people understand that it's a long haul. We've tried it, but it certainly is something we can do better at. And I think the other thing, it goes without saying, is that the final decision is at the board level for anything. The finance committee is, to recommendations and so on, but the final decision has to be at the elected board.
Okay, so even the city does, I would get a vote in the city session.
Exactly.
I would not let anybody else that's on that thing, but it is an ability to educate, to disseminate, but also to gather information for all input as well.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's a great idea. Your proposed members, I would add, a finance professional like Mike.
Actually, my is that incredibly talented person. Just an incredibly talented person from a structuring perspective. And again, he may want to be more of an advisor than be a member in this, but no matter what, he's the kind of person that would be valuable in any aspect of music.
Who is it? Did you put down?
Mike Hogan.
Yeah, okay.
He's on the, he's a trustee of the Church Beach House with me. He's in charge of our, he's our treasurer. And he's done a lot of good on our portfolio, and so with a really amazing background in financing. So he came and met with Earl and me a couple of weeks ago. Gave us some ideas.
Do we need to have, I'm going blank, I apologize, I haven't seen how long with, who's our finance advisor?
Tim Reed.
On this, or?
I think he's a liaison. I don't think he's on, that's the way the city's set up.
No, our financial, the company that we use to do our finance.
See,
Yeah,
Jim Reed.
okay, yeah.
Yeah, he's a liaison to our finance committee on the city side. He's not a member.
So what I'll do, with everybody's consent here, is I will seek a more formal process. I'll talk to people at city council and figure out how they've done it. And we can reach out to some other folks as well, put it down on paper so we can look at it and try to get a final approval.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 11, open forum general discussion for review and update of the current employee handbook. Mr. Gordon.
Turn this over to Austin. That's all.
Presently, members of the board, the handbook has been discussed for months now. It was one of RKL's deliverables. We started with a general handbook of about 90-something pages, and we got it down to about 50 or 60. Basically, in consensus, they came back with several different observations and recommendations. What they did was they streamlined it. They changed the tone of it to come less of a legal and more of just a discussion. They also changed like he and she to they and their, and they redistributed the verbiage in there to go away from the general manager and more towards the office manager who handles the HR functions. With that, there were several things that were changed and added, and you guys have both the red line version and a final version. The red line version that you have incorporates the original RKL recommendations, additions and deletions, the board members' comments, and then just what was existing at the time. And we have taken that. We worked with Dan McAllister in Mike's office. There were several topics that he was involved in. The biggest one was the on-call policy. We had a very umbrella on-call policy that was very vague. It was a one-sentence line, and we have since added a lot of detail. It does not change the structure of how individuals are compensated for being on call. We just made sure that we had the detail in place that we met all FLSA requirements. We can go into further detail. What we're looking for is this is a starting point for future revisions. But this is the final version that RKL has touched, that the board has touched, and that staff has touched.
Dan's already reviewed this and you're good.
He has. So part of Dan's bailiwick is employment law. He does a lot of deals with a lot of those issues. So this is right in his wheelhouse. I let him run with the review. I asked him prior to this meeting, he's taken a look at the final version. Has anything else to add? He said he does not. He's happy to entertain questions if there are specific questions from the board.
I don't think we need to go through this line by line, but if anybody has specific items that they.
Well, I have a concern about voting on it today.
Okay.
In as much as, and the red line we have was never reconciled. I mean, there are still open items in the red line. And the things that got changed from the red line to the final document. So when I started to try to go through and compare the final document with the red line, I just got totally lost. So really willing to say we start from scratch. If RKL actually has a red line of the final of how it got to that point. Because there are things that were in the red line that said, check with BPW to see if it's okay, or, like between the red line and the final, the entire employee suggestion section came out. It was only by happenstance that I saw that. So if we're going to approve this, I would propose that we either get another red line, or we wait until the next meeting, and we will go through the final draft. I have not done that final out.
We get to, I thought this was a reflection of, I didn't go back and forth between the two, to be honest with you. I looked at the red line. That's what I would rate. But so I didn't realize it was.
Yeah, the final red line does not.
Yeah, that's what you're saying. Yeah, I didn't.
Well, so RKO had the final red line, which had their original comments, the board's comments, and then we had met with RKO, Dan, and ourselves, and we had gone top to bottom and made those changes. I don't know if RKO has a copy that takes the red lines and creates another red lines or additional red lines. What they came out with was the final, which is the one that you have. The only thing that the BPW has touched since then is the on-call policy. That's the only thing. Go ahead.
If I can make a suggestion, it sounds like in that case, then what would be helpful would be for RKNL to run a red line comparing the final to the original. Yeah. And then it just reflects what the changes are.
Yeah. That would be fun.
Yeah.
You got a document, a final document, it's got thousands and thousands of words, and you've got these markups in those open ends, and we need to in the future make sure that we have red lines, and we zero the red lines out, and when we do the next changes, or we do tracking changes so we can do it by timeline.
Right. That was the only thing that was hard because RKL wasn't doing the tracking changes where you could actually answer the question. That was
right. Because Bill is capable of doing it where you respond to it and you close the comment out.
Sure.
And that was not what happened in this document.
I don't think we should do anything else. We can go ahead. You can get that from RKL. Yeah. Get that to us. There's no rush, obviously. This is not critical. Nothing's.
And the last time any of us saw this was a year ago or so. So frankly, it was that.
Why don't we defer this until we can get the revised document? Thank you, Tom. 12, open forum general discussion for scheduling a workshop to review and discuss actions from the rate review by Utility Financial Solutions for the BPW electric, water, and sewer rates. Mr. Gordon.
We have gone to UFS and requested a rate review of our water, sewer, and electric. They have come back with that. One of the person that's in charge at UFS is Dawn Munn. She's a partner with Mark Beauchamp that we've met at APPA and have heard. So they are a very, very well-respected group. No, it's just I'm not trying to sell them, but that's just the fact. They do a great job. We have 3 studies. We have provided those to you. We're not going to discuss them this evening. There could be several hours of discussion on any one of those, and we're going to go from there. But what we would like to do is set up a workshop for that. One of the other things that we have is we have a citizen who's written us a letter on that, and that's Robert Kennedy. And so he's given a letter. You have a copy of that, and you as a board can decide if you want to read that now or save that for the workshop. That's your decision to be made. I've talked to Dawn. My proposal is that we set a date about the second week of July, from the July 12th. That's the Monday, 13th or 14th. That's a Tuesday or Wednesday. I would recommend either one of those days. I've already talked to her. She's pretty much available except for 9 o'clock on the 13th. She's busy at that time. Other than that, she's open and available.
So what dates do you prefer?
I'm proposing Tuesday the 13th or Wednesday the 14th.
That may not be good for me.
Okay, all right.
I have family.
And I will, and frankly, so she's in Michigan. Their timing is the same as ours. And if you don't like those days, you can pick any you like.
Well, I would like to do it either later that week, 15th or 16th. 16th, because I don't know what that week's gonna go like for me.
The 16th works for me.
That week's not good for you. What about the next week?
I'd rather do it sooner
Okay.
and later for Dan being here. If we can do it on the 16th, that works. I'll be good by then.
When are you leaving?
I'm gonna be gone on the 26th is my last day.
Okay.
Actually, the 28th, I apologize. July 26th.
Okay. Much we put her in.
That was June.
Accepted.
What day is that?
Monday. That's a Monday.
Okay.
So you're gonna miss that Friday's.
Ice cream Fridays.
I might.
When you have ice cream Fridays, so I will put in the play. You can serve that.
Yeah.
Well, I never on the calendar was ice cream Friday without Darren.
That is almost hurtful.
So that was Friday with people.
I didn't bring my calendar with me. That's my fault. I should.
Which Friday? Friday the
16th.
That's fine with me.
16th.
Friday the 16th. Okay, that's what you're looking at?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll shoot that one. We're gonna try to verify with Dawn, and you want to start.
Well, once you check his calendar.
Again, I'll check with her as well. I can tentatively the 16th. We'll check on that. And if we need to change that, I believe we can do that without having any issues with anything to that effect. Is that correct, Meg?
Well, you should post the agenda a week in advance, so you've got some time to finalize.
Next week? What time? What time? Would you like it in the morning?
Yeah,
At noon, after morning?
9 o'clock.
9. Tax preference. Okay, we'll shoot for that, do the best we can, and again, we'll make sure it all stays out of the doghouse and you got it. So we'll shoot for 9 o'clock, July 16th.
And just for the purpose, I'm available all day, so if it has to move on the 16th, I'm open all day.
Got it. So keep your calendars out.
Robert, I think we'd rather wait to have that as part of the workshop rather than stand your own today. Is that all right?
Sure, that's fine.
Okay. Item 14, open forum general discussion to appoint interim general manager.
Let's move up one, just for.
It's 13, I'm sorry. Discussion to update your current financial audit process.
I'm sorry. Jumping in there, let's go.
Go.
We are looking at, so our auditors were physically on site yesterday and today. It seems to be going very well. And in fact, we should be very close to having the final product. What we would like to do is have that final product to you and then present it to you at our next board meeting in July. We propose that board meeting in July be the 21st. Because I will still be here. If you want to have it on the 28th, you're very welcome to.
With ice cream.
With ice cream.
The 21st isn't even work because that's planning commission.
Okay, well,
Planning commission.
So, I'm open the rest of that week, right?
let's see what's the flavor of your, so if you want to move it from a Wednesday to a Thursday or Friday, you could have it July 22nd or 23rd.
Let's not do it on Friday night.
How about 22nd to Thursday? 22nd doesn't work for me.
How about the 20th?
Doesn't work for me either.
23rd.
23rd does work. You could maybe have a day meeting.
Friday night.
You could maybe do it as a day meeting. If that's what the druthers of the board, you could have it as a day meeting. One of the things we do with the auditors, we have a executive session 1 hour before the regular board meeting. That's because you're going to be discussing the activities of individuals, and therefore it falls under the rules of executive sessions. So we have that, they go through it and fine tooth comb, they come out, we come to a regular board meeting, we have a board meeting there, we ask you to approve that and accept that audit report.
How much time do we want for the meeting?
I think for executive session, we need about an hour.
And the final follow.
The regular,
Yeah, but we had financials.
we could.
What about Infomart? Will you have your report by the 23rd of June?
Keep in mind, this is the July regular meeting. So it's not just the audit, it's the other business.
You need to allow 2 hours probably.
I would agree with the mayor.
And plus an hour for your executive session.
I agree.
Have to be the morning.
Yeah.
Do that.
So that'll become our regular board meeting, right? And so we're doing it on the 23rd?
Do you want to do it at 9 or 10? 10? Let's do 10.
10 o'clock on the 23rd. So the executive session will be at 9,
Okay.
correct?
Right.
Okay.
Let's just make sure when you post the agenda, you bold the time, that it's a different day and time for the regular meeting.
Okay, that's all I have for the
Okay. Now. Thank you. Item 14. Open forum general discussion to appoint an interim general manager. In what, if we don't have somebody by the time you leave. So, do I have any suggestions?
Suggest we nominate our assistant general manager, acting general manager.
I was in the mirror, Bob.
It was a close call too.
Second.
All in favor? Do you accept that?
I accept it.
Okay, fine.
No more condolences.
Ice cream fine as it is.
Starting on 28th.
Call to the public? Any public? All right, do I have a motion to go into executive session?
Well, we have, don't we want to suggest any additions to the agenda, next agendas or so forth? I'd like to do that.
we don't have that on there, we do need to make sure that's on our agendas from going forward.
I don't know, can we discuss it or not?
Like additions, deletions to the next agenda.
So going forward, you'll have a topic here. I don't, because you're talking about the next agenda, I don't think there's anything wrong asking and posing the question here today. That'd be the will of the board.
Okay, then I would like to propose. Well, first of all, I'd like to propose that we set up a workshop at some point, because Earl and I have been working on resolutions and policies. And so what we'd like to do is to give a list of policies that we already have, plus a list of resolutions which we think might be policies. And then give that to everyone in the board, and then they can look it over, and then you can get we can send it to you, a list of all our policies, a list of all our resolutions, and you can get the list from here, which gives a link to the. In other words, we're going to give you a list, and you'll say the number, and if you want to look at that resolution, you just go to the city's list and click on the link, and click on that number, and then what the resolution says comes up.
You talk about resolutions or policies?
Well, the power and either one. We only have a few policies. We only got like 8 policies. And so then whatever resolution you want to look at, take a look at it and see if you think it's worthwhile to be a policy. So that's the idea.
Is this an agenda item to discuss at the next meeting to set that?
Well, this would be to be able to set up a workshop. I don't know, do we need an agenda item to set up a workshop?
Yeah, I mean, I think the purpose of this is to ask topics to be scheduled, and then the question is if you want to go for a workshop for this, you can schedule a workshop. If you want to put it on the agenda, you can put it on the agenda. I will say, I mean, again, keep in mind that the president sets the agendas. So what you're doing is you are asking for topics to be scheduled. Okay. And then it's up to.
So this topic for that next agenda would be to set up a workshop for checking the resolutions.
We'll discuss the whole idea of policies at the next meeting and then set the workshop, or do you think we could go right to the workshop?
Whatever.
I think it would work either way.
In other words, for us to get this information out ahead of time and then discuss it at the meeting.
I think to discuss the topic first and then set the workshop once we know how we're going to construct it.
Yeah, I think it's okay. I think that's fair.
Sure. So we'll put that on the agenda for the the July meeting.
The other discussion I would like to propose we put on the agenda, and depends, I guess, on how much items we have on the agenda, but I would like to propose that we have a discussion about AMI, and especially AMI relative to our capital budget.
I'm not sure that that's right yet.
I was gonna say maybe push that to August.
August, okay? And put it on the August one.
So you're going to put both these down for future agendas.
Yeah, we'll put this one, we'll put the policies on for the.
I'm just saying you're going to keep a record of what's
Yes,
deciding that.
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Is that because we're having information from the company?
Yeah, I discuss with it weekly with them,
Yeah.
and for them to kind of get everything back together and get a good presentation together. I want them to take their time to make sure that it's a little bit better than the last.
That's a good idea. Okay, fine.
And my ask was surveys from the end user customers, and then cost savings for end user customers and cost savings for us.
And you also, didn't you ask about going and visiting or?
They actually mentioned that, and I said that was a great idea.
So good. So then I guess we're saying to put on the next agenda in July, a workshop, discuss to make a workshop. Yeah, for the policies. And then for August, put AMI as a discussion item.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So that's that.
Thanks, Tom.
Mhm.
I have a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Second. Yeah.